Well, a very good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for coming for this Stage 4 event, which incidentally has a title to this particular session, which is Informal 4.0. So the 4 is consistent. And thank you very much for that round of applause as we're coming up. Such a vote of confidence. Most appreciated. My name is Kudzai Mubayiwa. I am a co-founder of Eyes on Hub, and that's an incubation space that we run in Zimbabwe, in Harare, in Southern Africa. We basically just focus on enterprise development in the digital world. So we are working with, people who are in the informal sector and just helping them to build up proper business models and taking use or making, leveraging the opportunity of the internet, as it were. I'm going to be your moderator this morning, and I'm quite privileged to have beside me two powerful and important women who are doing important work, solving difficult and important problems. And I must say...
oh boy.
So I always have problems figuring out my left or right. This is my left. To my left is a beautiful Lisa. Lisa is going to introduce herself, tell us a little bit about what she does, and then I'll cross over to Niti.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's very good to be in Berlin. It's my first time, and I must say I love the city. I'm the head of membership and capacity building for the Internet Society Zimbabwe chapter. What the chapter does basically is to foster internet development towards internet that is open, fostering access to internet, as well as promoting emerging technologies, particularly to young people. I also have a startup called Green Spaces, which seeks to provide power sources, power and solar energy for outdoor spaces. So we also hope to be the pioneers of smart city development in Zimbabwe. My background is urban planning, and I hope to pioneer smart city development in Africa in the next few years.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Lisa. I'm crossing over to my right-hand woman, and I have Niti here. Niti is a design researcher, but I'll allow you, Niti, to tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Oh, all right. I do design research looking at the informal economy. My particular area of interest has been, why has the prepaid business model worked so well that it allowed for the adoption of mobile phones all across the developing world, where people believed that people should not be able to afford a mobile phone, much less the airtime and the data that it costs to come online. I've looked at that question in the ASEAN, in South Asia, and now for the past 5-7 years in East Africa. I'll be presenting today on some of my most recent findings from a trip I made earlier this year to Kenya. And biashara is the Swahili word for commerce or trade or business, and it does not get into the complications of whether the informal economy is legal or illegal or illicit or shadow. It distinguishes with the Swahili word magendo, which means smuggling. So there's a very clear division between what biashara is and what it isn't. That's what I'll be presenting.
Great, so we'll get straight into the presentation. Niti will start us off. She's going to walk us through a couple of slides, and really the discussion will be around issues to do with this gig economy in a digital world, in the digital space. What are the opportunities? What are the challenges for the informal economy, particularly looking at Africans who are participating in that space? So over to you, Niti.
Yes, this is one of my favorite photos that captures just what is going on. Just because he's pulling a handcart for a living, we can't assume he has not been to university. Just because of the way the employment situation is across the African continent and the demographics of youth, more likely he's hustling to buy data bundles because he's running a business on Facebook or he's a freelancer in Bitcoin trading. We don't know, but this is what brings the cash in. I'm just going to come back to that slide a little later and talk about the situation in Nairobi that I saw earlier in the spring, which is M-Pesa, the most famous mobile money service in Kenya, has become so ubiquitous that with any old GSM phone, you can just dial a USSD code and you can pay for your parking. The digitization that we are seeing, it goes into, look at the a very traditional trade good, auto parts, but all of the signboards now have their Gmail addresses. And there's a business center, which used to have been, or probably was, a cyber cafe, but now offers a range of services, as even Kenya is digitizing a lot of government services. This young lady is probably very recently out of school, and this is the market right outside Kibra, Nairobi's very famous slum, but it isn't as big as they say it is. She sells t-shirts. She doesn't have much of a stock. She's just started. You can see she's only got 7 or 8 pieces that are her inventory. But she puts up new stock and their photographs on her WhatsApp groups of friends and tells us that out of every 10 t-shirts, 1 or 2 regularly get sold through WhatsApp. Here's a lady who's taken that journey into the other extreme, where she's left her full-time job in an office and she selects second-hand purses, cleans them up, showcases them and puts them up for sale. She's earning enough that she could leave a full-time job and do that full-time. This is a gentleman who takes that to the ultimate extreme. He's got a branded product which traditionally would have been the informal sector's small-scale fabrication and manufacturing, charcoal ovens and stoves, but he's branded it, put a quality mark on it, and 80% of his business comes in from all over the world through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all of the free-to-use platforms. This is the heart of this emergent, decentralized digital economic ecosystem that we are seeing in Kenya. The M-Pesa, which is the mobile money agent, but she's probably has done university. It could be in some kind of a financially related topic like economics or accounting, because she's also a bank agent for at least 2 other banks. So this is really an economic service point for the last mile. The digital Africa business landscape, we are seeing digitization of services. Mobile money and fintech are, of course, exploding. The app economy, what we call gig, is interpreting itself interestingly in the African context, so I will clarify that. Rather than how we think of it, such as Uber or TaskRabbit creating precarious employment in the more formal economies, what's happening is that the app, the Uberization, it collates demand from all sorts of places and then efficiently and productively redistributes it according to location or capability. So you've got an Uber for goats that was launched in Angola, that was covered in The Economist magazine. The guy selling goats is not now just dependent on passers-by or people that he's built a relationship with to come and buy goats from. He's got X more percentage of income coming in passively through whatever activity is going on through this app. So that's really the core of what the gig economy is able to do in Africa. Biashara, which is what covers and encompasses the informal sector as well, is something that I've just started studying. So how is it changing? What aspects will remain constant? And what will continue transformation? Looking at just wholesale and retail trade, even M-Pesa, Safaricom, and the bank, KCB, are advertising, targeting the Mitumba wholesaler. Mitumba is second-hand clothes, so you can see the bale he's sitting on. this just to me is another one of those photographs which captures what is happening. You have a cooperative, collaborative economy, that's the informal. It's trust-based, there's no contracts or rule of law. And it's through trusted referrals, word of mouth, and the people that you know. That is scaling up with digitization. So this is just some of our work that we are now looking at the impact of digitization coming in. This is a very traditional product that was seen on Twitter. You can see it's been branded. It's porridge. It's your grandmother's porridge. It's been branded. So to summarize, do you want to take that photograph? Hold on. Your grandmother's porridge has been branded. So what we're seeing is that in the traditional sectors, things that have always existed for decades, such as trade, distribution, logistics, payments, are transforming thanks to the digitization. But what's emergent is things like CRM and marketing, because now you can do stuff with all the free-to-use platforms that you couldn't earlier. It's a no-brainer to send a WhatsApp message to all your existing customers. Hey, I've got new stock. So we're seeing that. What's the size of all of this market that we're looking at? In Kenya, it's 35% of the total GDP, which is not a small amount. It employs over 80% of the working population, 60% of whom are youths aged 18 to 35 years. It's employing 4 out of 5 people, and the new jobs are shrinking in the formal, the modern sector and government and civil service. This is the opportunities, but we've tended to put it as it's the informal sector these kids are going into. We need decent jobs. My question is, let's map this first, because you've got professional graphic designers, photographers showing up for shoots of secondhand clothes, making the little ads for Facebook. So you've got whole new professions emerging. You've got businesses emerging. There's a newspaper story of a lady who left her bank job because her cooking recipe Facebook page has over 1 million followers. So the advertising from groceries and cookware and household appliances is enough for her to retire from her job at the bank and just run the website. So now you'll have to tell me when to stop, because I can go on forever.
Well, thank you very much. I think very interesting insights. Please go ahead. Thank you. I was quite enjoying that and forgotten that I am the moderator here. So let me get back to my job and say thank you very much for those insights, Niti. Very interesting things, quite positive and upbeat, I must say, insights from East Africa. And it's an interesting thing to hear. Clearly there's some leadership in that respect, because East Africa has, been leading, I think, in most of Africa around things digital. It would be interesting to think, if I were to ask you one, maybe yes or no type of question. So have we, by all this, solved unemployment? Or will we solve unemployment?
I don't think so, because I was born in India over 50 years ago in Calcutta. And it used to have the reputation of the black hole of Calcutta, and it was the face of poverty. In my lifetime, I have seen that face change. So I have great hope that I saw a newspaper article saying Zimbabwe's informal sector was hit hardest by the closure of WhatsApp and Facebook. So my guess is it's as big there as well. So let's see. I don't have an answer.
All right, a smart answer, I must say. Now, speaking of Zimbabwe, which you do raise, Niti, I'm going to cross over here to Lisa. And Lisa, it will be interesting to hear what have been your experiences, what are the perspectives. I know you're a very strong leader of the Internet Society, the local chapter there. So what have you guys been working on? What have you seen?
Okay, before I get deep into what we're doing exactly as the Internet Society, maybe for the benefit of everyone, I'll just give reasons or the story of how regional economics have led to the rise of the informal sector. Probably a lot are asking, why is it that in Africa the informal sector is so huge? Why is it so? So when we look at most African cities, they were built during the colonial era. So, for example, I'll just take an example of Zimbabwe. Most cities were built during the Rhodesian period, where the British colony were in Zimbabwe. So the cities were built for a very few individuals. They were built for a few people who used to go to work, or white people, and very few black people. But after independence, a vast majority of people now migrated into urban areas. Why is it so? Because urban areas became centers of commerce, urban areas became centers of healthcare, urban centers became places where people could get jobs. So everyone moved from the rural areas into the cities. And because of that rise in population. The population could not be sustained by the few jobs that were available, could not be sustained by the few infrastructure that was available in urban areas. So because of that, there was the rise of this giant informal economy. And examples of informal economies are vending in the streets. Examples of other informal economies are, people have light industries. They have their small garages that they have a garage at their home, and they make chairs or they make furniture. So people now became entrepreneurial to survive. So that was the rise of the informal sector. So I'll talk then about how internet society has come to also help within the rise of this, the 4.0. Africa is also coming in a fast pace with regards to catching up with emerging technologies, with artificial intelligence, connectivity, etc. So we have a project that we call Community Networks in Zimbabwe, which is pioneered by our chapter. So according to a research done recently by Internet Society, we noticed that only 30% of Africans are connected, and those 30% are only located within urban centers. Why? It's because telecommunications find it profitable to build infrastructure in places where where there are numbers, you see. So they'll find it profitable to put their boosters in Harare, the capital, or in Bulawayo, or in smaller growth points, because those areas are where most people are. That's where there are profits. But there are small communities that also want connectivity, but it's not profitable for those telecommunications. So what we did is we empower communities to create hotspots. We can call them hotspots, or small. So it's an internet that is managed and also distributed to the community, by the community. So we have the Murambinda works in a small village in Zimbabwe, where it's a community, it's a small community, so they share the internet within that community. So this project has been also replicated in other African countries, and also in other island countries that also experience the same issue of connectivity. So what are we doing? We're trying to promote the internet economy. We're trying to promote digitization even within rural communities. And we hope that at the end of the day, we will stop that rapid rural to urban migration, because people are migrating to the urban areas because that's where the jobs are. But we're saying the internet has become very influential in creating jobs, very influential in creating markets. So if we can create those jobs and markets in rural economies, then we will have a balance within our regional economics. So that's my contribution to this discussion.
Right. Thank you very much. I think very interesting insights. Please go ahead as well. I think what I'm finding particularly interesting is, I think from where you're coming from, it was mostly rural, and I think, Niti, your presentations were mostly on occurrences within urban areas?
Today, but I have done rural research.
All right, that's fine. And I think it's as if these ones are aspiring to get where these are, really. It would be interesting in both your scenarios, in your work, what kind of limitations have you seen? I mean, this is all upbeat. It would be great for, in informal economy to just come on stream online, be able to access anybody in the world, share your story, share your services, your goods, receive payment, because mobile money is so powerful. But what are the limitations that you see, Niti?
It's intimidating. So we've met people, they may put one comment as an ad, like such a graphic logo of their product and the phone number. They may put it in marketplaces on Facebook, but they hesitate to open their own business page, even though they know there are others with the success, because there is a responsibility in managing that activity. And it's almost like mentally, because all the people that we spoke to during the qualitative research, either you jumped in, like those of us who are active on social media, or you were hesitant and perhaps leveraged it to within a comfortable level. And we saw that there was no pattern correlating this to either income or education or whatever. It's very much an individual thing. Just like entrepreneurship, not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Some people just want a regular job. So we can't assume that people want to go from what she's describing to what I'm describing. There are people who want to be there, but with a boost in connectivity.
All right, great. Lisa, your thoughts?
I think much of the challenges that they are with regards to connectivity is cost of connectivity. It's very expensive to get connected to the internet for some people. So they might not have the money to buy the data or to buy the bandwidth to be connected all the time. So I remember we had another discussion on when we say 30% of Africans are connected, what do we mean? Do we mean they're connected on a 24-hour basis? Or do we mean that they connect once a month, or they connect just in the morning and then they switch off, they're trying to save their megabytes or their gigabytes? So that's also a research that I think should be done within the internet circles to say, what do we mean by so and so is connected? And also there are people who actually have the connecting devices, like I can buy my mother in the village a phone that connects to the internet, but she might just not connect. She has the money, but she's just not connected. So those are also some of the challenges that exist. That it's very expensive, and some people might not be able to connect to the internet because they just can't connect, or they don't want, or they just have limited resources to do that.
Right. Well, we are fast running out of time, so I'm just going to open up very quickly. Perhaps in the audience, we might have one or two questions. I can see there's a hand already, so if I can get a roving mic there. I probably just have time to squeeze in two quick questions. That one, and then we'll take one more, and we will wind up. Thank you.
Thank you for the inspiring talk. My name is Mustafa. I'm part of a startup delegation from Iraqi startups. And we relate to a lot of things that you're saying. This informal economy is huge in Iraq as well, and particularly in the digital world. The way people are selling on Facebook and social media is huge. My startup focuses on last mile logistics and trying to serve. A large part of our merchants are through the digital economy who are using the same things that you guys are talking about. So we'd love to hear about examples of how goods are moving in this informal economy after people are selling, and how people are purchasing or receiving, especially since, probably similarly to us, most of the transactions are COD, cash on delivery. Online payments are rare. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Three things I think would be of interest to you. One is that the Kenyan market is an interesting one because M-Pesa, the mobile money platform, came in more than 10 years ago, and it's now used by 75% of the population, which means everybody who can use it is using it. That creates a financial abstraction layer for these guys who are kind of hacking their supply chain. Two types of digitization we've seen. One is startups like yours, who are either creating an app for motorcycle riders like Safe Boda, or even Uber's going into motorcycle call hailing apps, but for couriers, there's Sendi in Kenya. So there's activity happening in that space. But what we're also seeing is that the original informal transporters, like the minivans, the matatus, the larger organizations, their SACCOs, their cooperative organizations of over 200 owners, for example, have invested in an app from a small Kenyan firm who builds apps for the local needs and local economy, where it allows them to digitize the courier side of their transportation business, automating the notifications that customers get when they come and use their system for shipping parcels. So we're seeing almost like this hybrid new economy emerge, which is what my work is going towards.
All right, thank you. I think I'll squeeze in just one quick one from this side, just to be fair. There's a hand at the front there. Handsome gentleman at the front, yeah.
Hi. I was interested that all those informal economies are driven by mostly US-based platforms that weren't designed for this use, and I'm wondering if this might be a risk in the same way that, like, when the Hungarians used Swiss francs for their mortgages, and then the Swiss banks decided we're going to put up the value of the franc, and their mortgages were suddenly like 5 times higher than they thought they were. Are you worried that one day WhatsApp wakes up and says, well, we have an internal priority that just obliterates a huge section of the informal economy?
I'm going to ask Lisa to very quickly and be the last one to speak on that, because I know you had a shutdown in January. What happened to everything that was on the internet then?
Okay, so when we had our shutdown, it wasn't just emotionally devastating, but it also really affected a lot of businesses. So when WhatsApp shut down and Facebook and the internet, basically, it meant that people could not pay for their goods and services. People could not then order their goods and services. So that's a very interesting a look to say that what does it mean when those big companies like WhatsApp shut down or change their terms and conditions. I believe there's going to be a huge impact, because there's free and open source free services are being used a lot in Africa, and despite the fact that we should create our own apps as tech-savvy Africans, we should create our own platforms to solve our own problems. There's still also the challenge of cost. What is the cost of me as a startup to start my own startup and then market it and make sure that everyone uses my new WhatsApp? Because there's what we call internet consolidation, where we see that Google is consolidating the internet. I might have a website, but my website might never be visited. But if I create a Facebook page, my page will have visits. So this internet consolidation is also a big issue that we should really look into and say, do we really want the internet to consolidate, or we want it to remain open?
All right, so thank you very much, folks. It looks like that's all we have time for. Unfortunately, I won't be able to squeeze in a question, but Alisa and Niti will be here because we do need to move to the next session. And you would like their email addresses, or I'm sure they can help us just to sort of flight those while we wind up and also while we are on our way out. So I'll take that as a third question. So yes, you can have them. Well, thank you very much, everyone. That's all we have time for. Round of applause. Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you very much, Niti. And yeah, you can be able to come up through and talk to them. Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah.